Welcome to the Bakercast.
Warning, please keep out of reach of children and for use by adults 21 years of age and old.
Right on, man. Thanks for coming and visiting the studio. Stoked to have you guys in here.
Yeah, thanks for having us out.
Right on.
Just so blessed to be a part of this whole energy this weekend and to meet some of the team.
Awesome. Glad you can come and check out the experience. The place that we're in, we call it Las Vegas Dream Factory.
Yes.
So it's kind of like a neutral zone where anybody can come do projects or have fun or create artwork or whatever happens, and be able to have a space to do that, free of advertising anything else if you don't
Right.
want to. So
Sure.
so I use it to make my pieces here. We show off the pieces in the galleries, and super cool to have people over. It's by appointment only, so I don't keep it open to the public, and
Sure.
it's just how it is.
Yeah.
It's fun stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like right as you walk in the building, it just screams like, this is Jerome Baker. Your brand is like,
Cool.
and it's colorful, it's vibrant, and it's something that's, I think it's comfortable to the rest of the community.
Sure.
So we've been getting a lot of good positive feedback. We want to do something called the Bakercast with Jerome Baker, and people are really stoked on this idea.
I love it.
Let's go way back. How did you first meet Bob Snodgrass and basically get involved with the school of Snodgrass, we like to call it?
Sure. When I was a kid, and there was I'll kind of go back even further than before I met Bob Snodgrass.
Sure.
Okay, what's going on with the glass pipes in general and how we get to Bob Snodgrass is in the 90s, there was some good weed that had started to come over here from Amsterdam, from the coffee shops, the Northern Lights 5, the Haze, different legitimate strains that were tasting good, smelling good. It was different than the Mexican or Colombian that we were all used to in college.
Right.
I'm in my late 40s right now. And so when the kind bud came in, we looked for good ways to smoke it so we could taste it. So we were buying crack pipes. Okay. And you pack the weed in there and smoke it, and it would just taste so good. So the glass was the way to go. At the same time, there was a company called Graphics out. They had a vinyl, plastic bong with a soup can and a felt wrapped around it. And that was the way to kind of smoke a snappy bong hit.
All right.
And so all these different pieces of the puzzle came together when Bob Snodgrass invented the fumed glass technique.
Right.
And so what he did was he makes the pipe appear to change color the more you use it. As you smoke out of it, more and more different things become apparent. And so with all that, this perfect storm was the epicenter for the creation of these cool glass pipes, or the Piper movement, degenerate art, all this. This is what it's about. So when I was a kid, I used that crack pipe to smoke the weed just because it tasted good, and then as I did Grateful Dead tour, you kind of start hearing the name Snodgrass.
Sure.
Okay.
And, I went out to Eugene, Oregon, and I looked in the white pages and looked up SNOD. There's no internet at that point.
Right.
And went over to his house. I called him up, hey, man, can I come check out your scene? And,
that's awesome.
he's just super cool, man. He had a little trailer at the time, and living with his wife and his kid, and him and his kid were in the back of the trailer blowing glass pipes, and his wife was up there making stew, and they were real Oregon folk, and I came out from the East Coast, and so I was really attracted to that vibe and who he is and what he is as a human, just good people, good folks.
Just a good human.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. And so that's I think what bred his discovery of what we're doing now. He also invented the pushed bowl back then. Why the bowl is pushed is the heat rises and it won't burn your hands, and so lots of little things came from Bob. And so anyway, that's how I met him, is looking him up in the phone book, and he was gracious enough to show me some technique. I went up to Alaska and worked for a summer and figured out how much to buy a torch, and bought my torch and my kiln, and started
awesome.
going. Wow. And back in the early days, nobody knew anything besides a national hand torch, which was a very small torch.
Okay.
They didn't know about there was a bigger torch.
Oh, really?
And at one point in everybody's history, the one guy, Dan Kay, came back from Salem Community College. And Salem is a place where it's the only school in America you can still get a degree in scientific flame working, which is what we do to make these pipes. So Dan Kay came back from Salem with a Carlisle torch and 25 mil heavy wall. And that week, Cameron and Bob invented the first bubbler anybody ever saw, with the water in the pipe.
Right.
That's how primitive it all was. And it was so fun to be a part of it because we knew it was cool.
Can't imagine. Yeah.
It was like doing Fish Tour in the late '80s. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You knew something was going to pop in the end.
Yeah. It's like you just knew.
Yeah. So anyway, Bob just changed my world along with a lot of others. I'm lucky enough to be listed as, number 7 in his apprenticeship lineage. And I really appreciate, being a part of the whole, Piper movement. Eugene was the most incredible glass scene in the 90s that I could have ever been a part of. And I did a lot of things, and so I was in my 20s. I had a business that we did, $4 million a year in sales.
Wow.
We had 70 employees. I had a great CEO at the time, Saeed Matadi. I have had my partner, Jordan Schefter's been with me the whole time since college. So we have a tight-knit team.
Right.
And at that point, we were balling. It was like Willy Wonka's Bong Factory. I might have told you
that's
this
awesome.
in a different interview.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of how it was all going at that point. Eugene was cracking for sure.
Right.
Up in Seattle, there was the whole Glassworks Park crew, and that was like Jay Lee and Marcel and some of those ballers, Banjo. A lot of those guys had different technique that were coming out of there that were just fucking swamping what was going on in Eugene suddenly with the color and everything. So it was really
that's really cool how different techniques kind of developed from different areas and different communities.
Right. It came from different parts of where this thing was kind of coming out of. For me, along with Bob, I went to Pilchuck Glass School. Mm-hmm. And that was a big factor in my learning experience. My first glass class at Pilchuck was in 1995 with Robert Mickelson. And now he's one of the pipe ballers.
Sure.
So, I had the experience of working with him before he made pipes, and I was making pipes in his class and got kind of reprimanded for it. I sat down in his class. The first thing I made was a giant bubbler, and they all came to me at nighttime like, "Oh my God, I can't do that. Put that down." I'm like, "Fuck, man!" And I had never really seen a cold shop before, which is where you can cut and saw and grind glass.
All right.
So I just took the thing and cut it all to pieces and re-welded it a different way so it couldn't be smoked out of.
Yeah.
And then we played the game back then. But it was a really cool experience in my glass blowing history. It's a very important experience for anybody that wants to know glass. And from there, I met a guy named Hans Ittig. Mm-hmm. And Hans is a 7th generation German maestro. Okay. And his dad is still alive, kicking. His grandpa was doing sucking up mercury into thermometers.
Oh, wow.
93 years old still.
That's amazing.
Amazing knowledge. And so when I started making bongs in a production way, and I got my Henry Ford on and did my had one guy make a ball, pass it to the next guy, and we had this production experience that we were able to make a lot of pieces with. He comes in and shows me in all my knowledge that I thought I knew everything. I was making one bong, and he taught me how to make 2 in the same amount of time.
Oh, wow.
So it's a thing that can change your whole game.
Sure, absolutely.
The glass blowing thing is 5,000 years old or whatever. It's super
absolutely,
old.
Yeah.
And they have pieces from, these long times ago. So there's a lot of technique that's been around a long time. Mm-hmm. So you can't we don't want to reinvent the wheel. If you can find out what's going on for all these thousands of years of technique and use it in your own to build something new, that's what the Piper movement's done to this whole glass blowing phenomenon.
Who were some of the other students that joined you at the School of Snodgrass, like we like to say?
So in that time that I was there, one of the most prominent, badass glassblowers that got with Bob was Cameron Tower. Okay. Now, granted, Hugh was there with Bob since day one. Hugh's been there, and he's a quality killer flame worker, and has an incredible style that lends to this whole Snodgrass thing. So with Hugh and Cameron, there was a guy back then called Tori, and Tori invented the first spoon pipe. Nobody ever saw a spoon before Tori, and everybody was like, "Oh, we called it a chicken leg."
What?
Yeah,
that's cool.
And so I don't know what's happened to Tori. I don't see him in the scene at all anymore. But I know Hugh's deep in the whole Piper movement, and he's got a very respectful manner about him, and he's just one of the most legit guys out there. And Cameron Tower came from 7 years of welding bike frames at Schwinn to Bob Snodgrass. Wow. And when he got to town, one of his first days in town, before he ever started blowing glass, was at my house, and he drew a picture of my Bob Snodgrass pipe. I had this big fat one, on my mantle, and he drew a picture of it. And then he went over there and met him and started working with him. And
Wow.
I still have the picture to this day. Another guy that started back then is Bob Batcham, and he's invented the inside out. You know, that's when they open up the fucking flare and, and draw inside, and he goes back down, and he put little Jerry pictures in there and
that's
shit.
really cool.
So it's just super cool experience back then in Eugene, and even as it grew, you know, it got funneled for a little while. Like a lot of people would come up there. I lived way out in the woods, bro, and I would have people show up from fucking Pennsylvania in a van that had heard about me and wants to learn how to make a pipe.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And many of them, I would just kind of say, hey man, I'm not worthy of like training guys right now.
Yeah.
I'm still learning, and I'm making my production, and I really don't want to, you know, have the burden in the long run of teaching you something wrong.
Sure.
And so I would send them all to Bob.
Okay.
And many of these people that I sent to Bob, i.e. Jerry Kelly, i.e. Brian Bates, Brian Padilla, Dave Willis was over there. There's a lot of people, you know, that went over there from that, and just, you know, super cool stuff happens. You know, I mean, there's a lot of them like are on the board of directors of the Glass Art Society now, or working at Pilchuck Glass School, or, you know, in some higher capacity in the medium some way. You know, I still get looked down on and frowned on as the bong guy, okay? But some of the great masters I'm friends with, you know what I mean? And then we get the nudge. Yeah. I know I go to all the main conferences in the Glass Art Society and try to stay current in really what's going on in the medium. Because it's like playing a guitar. It's like if you can play really good guitar, then you can play any kind of song, any kind of music you want. I just happen to be attracted to the bong because it maybe like represents something cool and it's a little old school, but that's where that is.
Yeah, and that's really cool. And I've read Bongzilla actually contains uranium to make it glow bright green. What's it like to use a material like uranium? I never heard that was like used.
Sure. Well, it definitely sets off a Geiger counter, similar to what a microwave oven might.
Okay.
But it creates a certain quality in the glass that you use different UV lights to achieve. Okay, so with glass, it's an optic. You want to use your optics. You want to use the color in it, and you want to use lighting with it. Sometimes just taking that purple piece of glass, splashing some clear light through it, will create some purple on the wall. Right. You know, so you use these different things with the glass. The uranium is like one of the only things that and I'm not. And there's a lot of experts out there right now on what makes what happen in the chemical composition of the glass. Sure. I'm no expert. I know how to make blue or red or yellow or some simple shit. The uranium, they're getting actual uranium, they're mixing it with the glass, and so it cases it. They've learned this because back in the day they were taking some kind of nuclear waste or some kind of fission waste and putting it cased in glass to contain it for X amount of hundreds of years, thinking that was the right thing to do. Sure. They see this thing glowing green, right? They stick a UV light on it and they're like, what the fuck? Yeah. And so now, you know, somebody, and over time there's a lot of collectors collect this uranium glass or green glass, a lot of people might call it. So next time you're out at the thrift store or something like that, it's fun to look for the green glass ashtrays and shit. Like you find the fucking
they're super old school.
Yeah. If you're tuned in, you know, you go out to these things, it's fun to find.
Definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to direct you over to JeromeBaker.com. Make sure to follow all the social media pages. We'll be back. This is the Bakercast from Las Vegas, live from the Dream Factory.
Sometimes I feel like I'm channeling energy, and what I produce are the keys to the spaceship.
Welcome to the Bakercast.
Warning, please keep out of reach of children, and for use by adults 21 years of age and older.
This is the Bakercast, the official Jerome Baker podcast on JeromeBaker.com.
We are the voice of the cannabis community. It's a cannabis revolution right now. Right. We're changing the world that we're living in, and it starts with one bud at a time.
Thank you for joining us. This is the Bakercast, the official Jerome Baker podcast on JeromeBaker.com.